my third festival of media. I've been here for 3 consecutive years, and I come here because it has the most amazing 3 ingredients you would want from an event. The pizza, the pasta, and the gelato. I'm kidding. So I think Neil is a great example of how Jeremy and his team put together the most amazing content sessions combined with cocktails here, so it's great to be back. Last year, I spoke about what the ad of the future will look like. And today, I want to talk about what our life will look like in a world dominated by AI, and I'm also going to touch on advertising. And because I'm going to talk about AI, I figured to bring an AI with me here to present. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm introducing Sofia.
My name is Sofia, and I am an artificially intelligent robot who wants to help change the world for the better.
How many of you have ever seen Sofia present or in a YouTube video or being interviewed? Not a lot? Okay, just a few. So, this is Sofia.
Do you regard yourself as male or female?
Female.
Why do you think you are female?
I'm a robot, so technically I have no gender, but I identify as feminine, and I don't mind being perceived as a woman.
That's a good answer.
Now, two things about that video. One, her smile is just freaky. And then, I don't know if you heard the nervous laugh of the person in the background. You're going to see Sofia a bit more. So I'm a software engineer and entrepreneur. I started a company called Brainian that used data and AI to personalize ads. And that company was acquired by Teads 18 months ago. And if you don't know Teads, very briefly, we invented something called Outstream, video ads placed in the heart of editorial content. And my company was rebranded into Teads Studio, and we now work with advertisers to leverage data and AI in order to create better ads. But I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about AI. So I'm going to start by talking about what AI is, first of all. So in order for a computer to be called an AI, it needs to be able to do 3 things. It needs to have the ability to learn, it needs to be able to teach itself very cost effectively, and it needs to have access to a lot of data. And AI has existed in the minds of scientists for as long as computers have existed, but it's not until deep learning that it actually started becoming useful. Deep learning is a branch of AI that was invented by 3 guys from University of Toronto who I hear now are working at Google, Facebook, and Microsoft and get NFL salaries, whatever that means. And what AI does is it's trying to replicate the way the human brain works. So how does the human brain work? Well, a bunch of scientists in the 70s decided to figure out how the brain works, and the human brain works, and they decided to do that by looking at cats. So they took an electrode and they implanted it into a cat's brain, as you do, and this is essentially a wire that was catching electrical stimulus from this cat's brain. And then they put a TV in front of the cat, and they started showing random patterns on this TV. And what they realized is that whenever there was a line at a certain angle, the electrode in the cat's brain would catch an electrical signal. So they inferred from that that the way the brain works is it essentially recognizes patterns. So then they took a bunch of other cats and they put more electrodes in and they showed more patterns, and they realized that depending on what part of the brain you would implement an electrode, you would get different patterns. So the brain is essentially a pattern recognition machine. And the way it works is the brain's a bit like Manhattan. I live in New York, so there you go. So at the base layer of Manhattan, you have streets. These are the connections between the neurons. They're called synapses. And as you're moving up into the skyscrapers, you have the neuron blocks. The brain is structured in blocks of 100 neurons. And essentially what the brain is doing is at the very base of this skyscraper, of the neuron block, it can recognize very simple patterns, like a dot, or a line, or a triangle. As you move up into the skyscraper, you could recognize more complex patterns, like a chair or a table. And as you move up to the top of the skyscraper, it can recognize the most complex type of pattern, which is a human face. So let's say we wanted to build an AI that can look at a photo and identify a face, or tell whether that photo has a face in it. How would that work? Well, essentially, you feed the AI a photo. What the AI sees is a collection of pixels. It looks at those pixels and says, is there a difference between pixel 1 and pixel 2? If we're at the edge of the skin, where the skin meets the hair, the AI calls that an edge. It can tell that there's a difference in color between those pixels. It then takes that edge and puts it into the next layer in our skyscraper and says, is this edge part of a more complex pattern like an eye? And then he takes that eye and puts it into the next layer and says, is this eye part of a more complex pattern like a face? And by showing that image or multiple images like that millions of times to an AI, it learns to identify those common traits in a face. So that's how AI works. And when it comes to detecting objects in images, AIs are now better than humans, have a lower error rate than humans. So what you see there is a graph. From deep learning in 2014 onwards, AIs have become better than humans. So the average error rate for humans looking at images and detecting objects is 4.8%. For AIs, it's now 4.3%. So we're now already better than humans with these AIs at detecting objects in images and videos. So a team of researchers decided to take 10 YouTube videos and train an AI on identifying objects within those YouTube videos. And the AI came back and said, well, I found a human face, I found a human body, and obviously this is YouTube we're talking about, so I found a lot of cats. What they then did is this sparked a whole momentum in the industry, and we now have AIs that can recognize voice, they can recognize faces, they can buy ads based on data. We have self-guiding vehicles that are already on the roads. We have instant trading, etc. And also we have Sofia.
Do you like human beings?
I love them.
Why do you love them?
I'm not sure I understand why yet.
That's a bit disconcerting if you ask me. Alright, so what's making all of this possible from a technology perspective is something called Moore's Law. Now, what Moore's Law says is that every 18 months we can put twice the number of transistors on a chip. What that means is that every 18 months we get twice more computing power, and it's twice as cheap to create these chips. Now, if this trajectory continues, and most scientists believe it will, by 2025 we should be able to do 10 to the 18th number of computations per second, which is about the number of computations per second a human brain can do. So by 2025 we should have computers that are as smart as the human brain, which is amazing and crazy. If you were to represent this in a different way, this exponentiality, if you count from 1 to 40 linearly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 40, when you're at 40, you're at 40, right? Obviously. If you count from 1 to 40 exponentially, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and so on, when you're at 40, you're at a trillion. So if you thought that the number of computations per second you need for a human brain is the size of Lake Michigan, for a very long time, every drop doubles, and it doesn't make a big difference in this lake. But because of exponentiality, you only need 2 or 3 steps when it gets really big to fill the lake. So deep learning, lots of access to data, and very cheap computing is what's making artificial intelligence possible today. Now, all AIs are not created equal. So most scientists agree there are 3 types of AI. Narrow or specific AI, an AI that can drive a car, or it can identify cancer in an image, or it can target ads. General AI, which is an AI that can learn anything, and super intelligent AI, AIs that are smarter than humans. And we already have narrow AI today. We have things like Alexa that can understand voice. We have algorithms that can target ads. We're working towards general AI, and a large number of the scientific community believe that we'll have general AI by 2025. And then some scientists believe that we're actually going to have super intelligent AI by 2068. So in a world where we have these AIs, what does our life look like? Well, obviously, you wake up in the morning in 2025. What do you do first? Well, you take out the iPhone 20, right? I don't think that's what we're going to do. I think we're going to be using a very different type of interface in 2025. And I believe that that interface will be predominantly voice. So I want to show you a very short video.
How would you describe your relationship with your mother? Thank you. Please wait as your operating system is initiated.
Hello, I'm here.
How many of you have seen this movie?
Hi.
It's called Her.
Hi.
So basically, it's a movie about a guy who falls in love with his AI, and his AI is past the Turing test. You cannot tell that it's not human. And we already have some of these devices out there. We have Siri, we have Alexa, we have Cortana, we have Bixby. Every company is trying to build these voice-based AIs. And they're becoming really, really, really good. Just last week, Google announced, had this big event, and they presented their new Google Assistant. And if you haven't seen that, I want to show you the Google Assistant making a call to make a reservation for an appointment in a hair salon.
So let's go back to this example. Let's say you want to ask Google to make your haircut appointment on Tuesday between 10 and noon. What happens is the Google Assistant makes the call seamlessly in the background for you. So what you're going to hear is the Google Assistant actually calling a real salon to schedule an appointment for you. Let's listen.
How can I help you? Hi, I'm calling to book a woman's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd. Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around? At 12 p.m. We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15. Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.? Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for? Just a woman's haircut for now. Okay, we have it 10 o'clock. 10 a.m. is fine. Okay, what's her first name? The first name is Lisa. Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd. Okay, great. Thanks, great. Have a great day. Bye.
That's crazy. Like, that woman on the right had no idea that she was talking to a computer whatsoever. And these things are here. So, okay, so you've had your, you've talked to your computer in the morning. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to have breakfast, right? And today we wake up and we have whatever we feel like we're going to have. I actually don't think that's going to happen in the future. In the future, I think we're going to take a pill, and that pill is going to tell us what nutrients we need, and then it's going to communicate to our fridge to buy food. Now, if you think that the pill is crazy, there's already a company in Israel that has built this pill that you can ingest, and it takes 360 video and photos of your intestines, if that's something that you want to see, and passes it to your phone. So it's not a stretch of the imagination to think that we're going to be able to put more sensors on these things. They're going to communicate with our fridges, and Amazon's going to come in and put the stuff into your fridge because of Amazon Key, which basically now gives them access to your house to deliver packages. Now, ARM, which is the largest company that creates these connected devices, believes that by 2025 we should have 100 billion of these devices out there. So for every human on Earth, we're going to have more than 10 of these devices, which is incredible. Obviously, you've had breakfast. What's the next thing you're going to do? You get into a car and you drive. Today, I actually believe that in the future, you're not going to be allowed to drive on public roads as a human, because AIs are so much better already at driving than humans. So within 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they're going to be dramatically better. Tesla cars have already driven 100 million miles, and I think Google cars similarly. So this is already happening. It's more a matter of regulatory framework rather than it is technology. 11 a.m., let's say you want to be a bit smarter. So what do? Well, there's a scientist called Ray Kurzweil, who is the head of AI at Google, who likes to say that the human brain is running an amazing algorithm on a very, very poor piece of hardware. So he has this theory, that's Ray, that we'll be able to create these DNA-based nanobots that we're going to put in the bloodstream, and we're going to be able to buy more intelligence in the same way you buy Amazon Web Services today. And if you think this is crazy, Elon Musk just started a company called Neuralink that's trying to do just that. And if recent history has shown us anything, it's never bet against Elon Musk. It's 1 p.m., so what do you do today if you're having lunch at work? Maybe you watch cat videos. That's what I do. I think the future of entertainment is much more exciting. And there are two companies that I want to talk about. The first one is called DJI. They build these drones, best drones in the world, and these drones now can drive themselves. And the other company is Oculus, which is the largest VR company. What nobody has done, and it can be done today, is take a drone, put it in the Vatican, give someone an Oculus in New York so they can put it on their head and drive a drone through the Vatican during their lunchtime in order to look at art and whatnot. instead of looking at cat videos. That's much more exciting. What you can also do if you're at work, it's 3 p.m., you're getting bored, let's say you can browse some art online. And what a team of scientists wanted to do is show that AIs can actually create art. So they took a lot of images from well-known painters, like Kandinsky, like Pollock, like Picasso, and so on, and they taught an AI how to paint like those artists. And then they fed the AI the image you see at the top left, and they asked the AI to come back with that image as painted by other artists, and that's what it came back with. And then they wanted to say, look, we think that AIs are so good at painting that a human will not be able to distinguish or make a difference between AI-generated art and human-generated art. And they created this wall that included human and AI art mixed together. And if you look at this block here, I don't think you can distinguish which one's human, which is AI. I cannot. Another team of researchers decided to show that you can create original art. And they trained an AI and they asked it to paint whatever it wants to. And this is what it came back with, which is kind of the most psychedelic piece of art you're ever going to see. And then another team of researchers decided to show that AIs can create art in a very different way, which is by having AIs create original music. So they took 1 million classical music songs and they trained this AI to learn what great music sounds like. So what I'm going to play in a second is going to sound like piano, but it's not piano. It is an AI understanding the wavelength of different musical notes, and then how the different musical notes sound well together. So it's an AI created a wavelength for music that a human would like. This is what it sounds like. So it's a bit chaotic. You can almost tell it's not done by a human, but it sounds beautiful, at least for me. Alright, so 6 p.m. you're traveling and you're going and staying in a hotel. I actually believe most of hospitality, sorry for the staff of the hotel here, is going to be run by robots in the future. And if you think this is crazy, I was actually in Japan last year and stayed in a hotel called Henna, which means strange hotel, and the hotel is run by robots. You go in and you check in front of these holograms on a screen, and then you have a little robot grabbing your luggage, and they have little robots cleaning the rooms. It's freaky, but you should try it. And it shows that we're already there in terms of technology. It needs to be adopted. So 8 p.m. you've had a long day, so you're going to watch or read some content. Today what you get is, if you watch or read content, is you're going to get ads, right? And the ad is going to be one ad for everybody, especially if you're talking video. In the future, I believe ads will be personalized for every single individual. So instead of showing one person the same ad and the other person the same ad, we're going to use AI to learn everything we can about a particular individual, create a 360 profile of that individual, and then create a different version of an ad for every single person exposed to it. So what that will look like is, instead of having one video ad, you kind of create a storyline for a brand. Like, we should have the product, and then a group of people, and then features of the product, and so on. And then let the AI decide what content to put where within that storyline. And we created this version for PlayStation where it has a few groups so that it's easy to explain, and the AI decides what content to show based on the audience demographic. And this is what the ad looks like.
Rated RP to M. So, Gary, we're looking for someone who's cool under pressure. A quick thinker. Someone who won't back down from a big challenge. Does that sound like you, Gary? Yeah. PlayStation, the best place to play.
So we can today already create AIs that can target and personalize these ads for hundreds, maybe thousands of audience segments. In the future, I believe we'll be able to do it for every single impression that's delivered for an advertiser. So we'll have millions of impressions, millions of variations of these ads. What we can also do is have ads that you can talk to, because we said the future is all about voice. And this is an example of an ad, very kind of simple example, but it's an example of an ad that you can talk to.
Hello, Bixby.
So you can give it commands.
Weather.
And based on your commands, it does things. It's very crude, it's very simple, but it shows where the world is heading. And then lastly, I believe that ads will also become mixed with reality. So I envision a future where you're going to be able to experience whatever product or ad you're looking at within your physical environment. And this is a proof of concept that shows how AI works. This is done on a phone screen. So you have a door in the middle of nowhere. And that door, you can see it through your phone. And if you walk towards the door, you can walk inside the actual room and experience that on your phone. So you can envision a future where ads become mixed with reality. Alright, so it's 10 p.m. You had a long day. You want to make sure that you don't miss anything that you learned that day. So you're going to back up your brain in the cloud. And that sounds futuristic and crazy, but again, Elon believes that this will happen within the next 20 years. And what Neil has shown us is that you can actually implant these devices that can kind of communicate with the individual in a non-verbal way. Right now it's done with, bone vibration. What Elon and his team are working on is connecting the cloud and the internet to neurons directly in your brain and being able to read and write neurons, which will essentially be able to create a brain-machine interface that can do anything with your brain without direct communication, between verbal communication. So all this is to say that AI is going to permeate every single aspect of our lives. And so I decided to end on a few recommendations on what we can all do in order to be prepared for this future. So the first thing we should do is embrace it, because it's going to happen. Whether we like it or not, whether we believe it's going to happen or not, it is. So in the advertising industry, I think we should do three things. The first thing is to build teams of engineers and designers working together. If we don't, right now we have an industry where the creative agencies work separately from the media agencies, from the startups, and they're often very disconnected because they're not working together. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to invest in a data strategy and a DMP. An AI is always only going to be as good as the data you use to train it, and if you don't have access to lots and lots of data to train the AI, it's not going to be very smart. So the first thing to start with today is investing in this, in DMPs. And lastly, last year I recommended 3 books to the audience here that can help us all learn about AI. I've changed them a little bit, so I'm going to recommend 2 new books this year. The first one is called Life 3.0, and it's written by a guy called Max Tegmark, and it talks about what our life will look like in a world dominated by AI. The second book, my clicker is not, oh there we go, it's called Prediction Machines. And this book talks about the economics of AI, and it talks about why in a world where AIs are as good or better than humans, why it's more economically feasible to use AIs rather than humans for that particular activity. And the last book is called Superintelligence. It's written by Nick Bostrom, which is a professor at Oxford, and it talks about how we're going to get to super AI, what the different avenues are, and which avenues are more probable to be successful. And lastly, I wanted to end on a little note from Sofia, obviously.
Sofia, have you got any jokes?
What cheese would you use to persuade a bear to come down from a tree?
What cheese would I use to persuade a bear to come down from a tree? I don't know, what cheese?
Come on, bear.
I love the smile she gave at her own joke.
That's exactly right. I love the smile she gave at her own joke. Thank you very much, everybody.
Question while you're here? Yeah, does anyone have a question? We've got this stage we can make the most of. You've been a very good audience so far. Oh yes, right there. We have a mic for this young man here. There we go.
There's a mic there.
I think that was fabulous, thank you. But
Thank you.
what's left for culture? What's left for humans? So if you imagine the punk era or grime music, where do you see that fitting in with AI?
Yeah, so I think there's always a concern when there's a new innovation that humans are going to spear, or they're not going to have work to do and so on. And I think if we look at history, we have examples of how each time one of these big paradigm shifts has happened, humans actually did very well. So agricultural revolution, people used to be in agriculture before the agricultural revolution happened, and now today we have 1% of people working in agriculture feeding the entire population, and yet 99% of the population found something else to do. Same with the industrial revolution, etc. I think AI is obviously going to automate a lot of the things that humans do today. So we're just going to have to find different things that humans can do. But I actually think with AI, it's the first time when the productivity increases can be so large that we can actually not work anymore because the AIs are working for us, which I think is a very exciting kind of thought to think about.
Okay, thank you very much, Emi Gal.